This week's streaming pick of the week is the show Happy, starring Christopher Mullaney as Nick Sachs and Patton Oswalt as Happy, a child's imaginary friend who haunts Nick into helping find said lost child. With the darkest sense of humor currently on television, this is a very twisted buddy cop show like you've never seen before. It is currently my favorite show, so go to sci-fi.com to stream full episodes. Now, on to this week's episode of Nerds Drink Whiskey.
All right, hey everybody. This is another very special episode of Nerds Drink Whiskey, where we just hand the mic off to somebody else and let them take over. So we're still here at Sandstone Distillery, and he's going to give us some history about the distillery and how it mixes into our local community and a whole bunch of other really interesting stuff. And if you watched our last episode where he did us a tour, you'll know that it's going to be very entertaining, so don't let the length of this episode scare you away. So it's a little longer than our normal episode, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. So we'll be back in just 2 seconds. Oh, wait, no, he's going to hand the phone off to somebody else. So, all right, so here you go. We're going to hand it off to him and let him run the majority of this episode.
What a brave man. Just hand off the whole microphone to me and let me start talking. That's dangerous. But hey, here we go. Sandstone Distillery. It was about 13 years ago we started making whiskeys as just on a whim to have a hobby. I mean, I had a trucking company at the time, and we started off with one truck, and we ended up with like 20 of them. And so now I was steering a desk instead of a truck at night, and I would come home and just watch TV. Well, here I was watching, Dish Network. Got 300 channels on there, and you're going through this thing, and there's nothing on. I mean, you go through it twice. Everybody over here is nodding at me going, yeah, you get carpal tunnel from going through this thing. And I was bored. So I had a snifter of scotch in my hand, and I looked at the scotch, and I just kind of had this random stupid thought of, gosh, I wonder how they make that. And then I thought, I wonder if I could make that. So I went over and Googled alcohol, how to make it, and sure enough, I published pages and pages on how to make alcohol and to keep from poisoning yourself, and I started experimenting with this stuff. Well, what happened was I started cutting up my wife's pots and pans and things, trying to make a still out of it, and it was a horrible mistake. It was absolutely terrible, and it just didn't work, and she was getting upset. And so I found one online, and I bought it. And if right over there next to the door, you can see that thing that looks like two milk buckets welded together, that was my first still. And I bought it online, got it home, and of course I had to ask for permission first because, you don't go spending, money without telling your bride. Just there's 2 cents of advice to stay married for 36 years. And she says, yeah, go buy that thing and leave my stuff alone. So I did, got it home, and it was still not great. In fact, it wasn't even good, but you could make that rocket fuel, but it gave me something to play with and do. And as things progressed more and more over the next couple of years, I got a letter in the mail one day, and it was a registered mail from Department of Treasury. And I thought, that's kind of odd. What do they want? It must be something to do with taxes, because I was getting stuff from the Department of Transportation all the time. So I turned the sign for it. So now they know I have it. And then I open it up and I start reading this thing. And I start reading, it says, Dear Mr. Borden, we understand you have this still. Well, my first thought was, well, so? You can make beer, and make wine as long as you don't sell it. And so I didn't think I was having a problem at all. And I'm probably incriminating myself, but this is past tense, and now I'm legal, so I'm okay. Anyway, so it goes on to read, we sincerely hope you're not distilling alcohol with this still, because the penalty for distilling alcohol without a federal permit is $10,000. And I'm thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's a butt pucker moment right there. I'm looking at this thing going, $10,000? You gotta be kidding me. And then it goes on to read, there's more. It's also 5 years in prison. Well, hell, I'm too pretty to go to prison. That's not a good idea at all. And then it goes on one more time. I look at it and it says, oh, it's also a felony. A felony. So try to do anything in life as a convicted felon. Most people don't care what the felony is. They just see that you're a felon and you're off the list to do whatever you want to do, whether it's volunteerism or a job or anything else before it even starts. And so I'm freaking out because growing up, anybody ever grow up with a group of kids and you go out and you do something dumb? You 2P the neighbor's house or something stupid, and there's always one in the group that gets caught. Well, that was me as growing up. So I'm freaking out that these guys are going to come get me. And I take it over to a buddy's house and we hide it over there. And one thing led to another and nothing ever happened to the thing. And about 6, 7, 8 weeks later, still they haven't called back. And I had the itch to make a batch. So I started looking up classes and workshops all over the country. And there were some this is like 2008, 2009, right in there. There were some distilleries in Colorado that were teaching classes. So that's when I started to learn the rocket science behind the rocket fuel. And all of a sudden our product went from tasting like kerosene to tasting like something like a whiskey. And then it got better the more you learned. And so we got to a point to where it was pretty darn good. I mean, even my wife liked it, and she has a palate that is really discerning. So we were getting burned out on trucking. We put the company up for sale. Well, it took about a year, but that company sold. And then I was retired, and we decided to go into the distilling industry full time. So that's when we built this place. And we're building it along, and we thought before we started getting the building and tearing down the old barn. See, we had an old barn here. We had horses and things, and cows and pigs and stuff like this. And when we tore down the barn, repurposing is something we kind of do throughout the whole place. And the wood that's on this wall here, and the restrooms and whatnot, those are all from the old stall walls. Right down to the point to where your little spot right here, this is where my wife's Mary used to chew on the wood. So we even saved that, because you think about it, life is just a bunch of memories, right? We're only one memory away from having none at all. So we wanted to save those things. And we also wanted to have good neighbors, and everyone has a different attitude or feelings about alcohol, good, bad, and indifferent. And so we thought we should go talk to the neighbors. You want to have good neighbors, be one. That works pretty well. So we went to talk to the Wrights. Now, when you guys come out to visit, you'll come up Wright Road, and the Wrights of Wright Road live right across the street. They homesteaded here in 1902, so they've been here for generations. Super, super nice people. In fact, when Jenny and I moved out here with our little kids, the Wrights were just becoming empty nesters. Their kids were moving out, and I was the same age as one of their sons, and my son was the same age as their grandkids, so we got adopted by those folks, just like they were our own. Well, Dave, I wasn't worried about Dave, Dad, about being upset about having alcohol across the street, because he'd been in the garage making hooch anyway with me. So he was like, this is going to be great. This is going to be so much fun, because he was telling me where all these other places around here where they used to make moonshine back in the day. And but Mariana wasn't so sure about. I mean, you got this sweet, sweet little old lady, and she's only about that tall. And how's she going to feel about alcohol across the street? So we go down to have our chat, and she's sitting there. She's got her arms folded like this, and she's giving me a little bit of the stink eye. And she looks at me, says, "John, what exactly are you going to make up there? Now you're getting rid of the barn, and you're going to make alcohol. But is it beer? Is it wine? What are you going to do?" And I says, "Okay, what I plan to do is I plan to make a vodka. We also plan to make a whiskey." And then right before I could say gin, she perks up like this. She says, "A whiskey? Well, I'm the descendant of a Scotsman. And whiskey's good, so this is going to be fun. What are you going to call the place?" And she's all excited. So hey, we're all good with Mom, so we were good with everybody. And I said, well, Sandstone Distillery, because Tenino is the city of stone. If you ever get a chance to visit Tenino, it's the neatest little town you ever want to see. They've got a walking tour that you can get right there, and that shows all the old buildings downtown. They're all made out of sandstone. See, back in 1888, there was sandstone outcropping was discovered. And as they started carving this stuff out of the ground, they found that it was super high quality. So these quarries were dug out, and they had 3 of them in town. One is now the town swimming pool. That's a really kind of neat place to go swimming. And another one was owned by her grandfather. And she says this to me, my grandfather owned the quarry. I says, you got to be kidding me, really? I says, yeah, just a minute. She gets a bunch of pictures. I mean, a stack like this, a whole bunch of them. Some are hanging on a wall here. There's some in the restroom. And then this handsome man is her grandfather. His name was Andrew Wilson, and he left Scotland at the ripe old age of 14. Because at 14, you were pretty much an adult in the 1800s, so you had to get with the program. So he gets a job on a sailing steamship, leaves country and home, and never went back to Scotland. They get over here in the United States, and they deliver the freight they had on board. And this kid's just a grunt sailor on the lowest of the low on this boat. They delivered their freight, and then they picked up more and delivered that and did it again and again and again. This kid was at sea for 6 years. And in a 6-year period of time, he made his way all the way down the coast of America and South America, around the Horn of South America. And for me, I've sailed. I've sailed to Hawaii on a boat with just a small one, 33-footer, and I know what it's like out there. It'd be terrifying to go around the Horn of South America in a boat in the 1800s. Anyway, out to the Philippines, back to the United States, and they shipwrecked. Andrew makes it to shore. He survives the shipwreck. But here he is, foreigner on a foreign land, and he has had enough ocean in his life. He doesn't want to see a boat ever again in his life. He wants to do something on land. And so he comes up here to Tenino and gets a job at the quarry as just a laborer. Well, he works hard. He's got some skills. He works up to an echelon called quarryman. and then keeps at it, works hard, gets up to stone carver, and that's kind of the brass ring of that world. If you were a stone carver, you were the top of the line. Well, he ends up buying the place, and he owns it until it went out of fashion back in the 30s, 1930s or so. And people don't know about is that our sandstone here was such high quality. It was built mansions in the Portland area and in the Seattle area, but the foundation of the Olympia Brewery, the old brew house, that is all Tenino sandstone that came up in wagons from right at his quarry up to build that place in 1906, I believe it was. And it's also in the Washington Monument back in D.C., the old Capitol building downtown. I mean, this stuff was all over the place. Well, this picture here, it means a lot to us. You see, it wasn't picture day at the quarry. Old Andrew would wear a suit and tie to work every single day as a stone carver, which I just think is kind of cool in and of itself. In fact, you can see the guy in the background there has got a collared shirt and a vest and all that. Well, you ever have someone in your family that hands down like heirlooms or keepsakes? You know, the difference between a keepsake and an heirloom is the price, you know, jewelry or something. Well, these guys, the Wilson clan, they took it to a whole new level. These guys, they had, Mary Ann had to hand it down to her, from her grandmother to her mother, and now to her, and it was in a drawer in the back of the house, one of Andrew Wilson's old aprons that he used to wear while he was carving stone, and it's hanging right there today, and we have it on display. And matter of fact, this mallet, see the picture here, and the mallet up here in the corner? If you look up there, it's sitting on the wall right now. That's been handed down. I mean, she brought that over to us to share with other people. In fact, we had one day, it was really hilarious, because she comes up here, and she's really excited, and we're building this place. She says, "John, would you like to see a box of Granddad's old tools that I found?" And she knows I'm geeky about all sorts of stuff, or maybe I'm nerdy. I'm nerdy about all stuff like that. And so we go down to the old farmhouse, and she comes out with this tool right here, and you take a peek at that. Now, if you take a peek right there, you might be able to see that stamped in there is A. Wilson, Andrew Wilson's name. So it really was his tool. And I take it back home here because I'm so excited about it, and we're going to put it on display, and she's excited to see her family stuff being shared as well. And we get the whole building done, and we get the pictures all framed up, and then I get to looking at this one. Come close and take a look at the striations in the stone. See, like I said, it wasn't picture day. He carved off this side, and then they told him to stand over here while we take your picture, and then we're going to get back to work again. Well, he's working on that side now. And if you look at the chisel end of this chisel, it matches up just perfect with the striations in the stone. So what's happening here is that he's carved off this side. Now he's working on this one. This tool is either in his hand or it's one of those that's sitting on top of the stone. So for all the people that come out, we get to hold this history and then see there it was at work back at the time. In fact, from this picture also, we got the hammer that's in his hand. That's the style that gave us our logo. Rather than just, hire somebody to, hey, make me something cool and sexy that sells well, we looked into our past to find where our future was going to be. In fact, we have a few other things around here. The door over here, when people say, "What do you got a door in your distillery for? What's that for?" He says, "Well, when Andrew passed away, his wife passed before he did, and when she passed, he kind of lost all ambition to take care of things, to keep up on it. And so when the kids did get the house and he had passed on, it wasn't looking so great. So what are we going to do with this house? Well, we can fix it up, but that's expensive, and we don't have any money. And so, well, the one thing you never ever did back in those days is waste anything. You didn't waste stuff. So what they did is they pulled apart the house, and they saved the bits and pieces that they thought they might need someday, and gave away to those in need, or sold the parts that they didn't need and could sell. And that is the front door off of Andrew Wilson's home in downtown Tenino from back in the day. And it was a cool door because of the carvings. You get up here and you look at the carvings, whatnot. The doorbell was all on there. But the thing I liked about it most was the door knob. It had 2 skeleton keyholes, which I thought was kind of cool. I'd never seen an old door with 2 skeleton keyholes before. So it was really a nice door for back in the day. I mean, that or the crime rate was high, one of the two. But it was a nice door. And so now we have it on display. See, they've been saving this thing because you never know when you're going to need a new front door. So they've kept it in a barn or in a tote or a container for almost 50 years now. Well, come on over here. I got something to show you. This over here, take a look at this picture. I'm going to pull it right off the wall here so you can get a look at it. It looks like a sawmill. But when you get to looking at it, you can see that they're actually cutting blocks of stone with this saw. And Dave comes up here one day. Now, he's kind of mild-mannered farmer type of guy. Really super wonderful man. He's really excited because he comes up and he's got these things in his hand. And he's, John, I found them. I've been looking for these for weeks and weeks, and I come only seeing them every couple of years, and you got to put them in the museum. Because our tasting room is now the Andrew Wilson Museum up here. And he hands them to me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm going, Dave, these are really, really cool. What the hell are they? And he says, well, you know the sawmill picture? I says, yeah, I got it hanging on the wall. It's up at the distillery. He says, these things here, these are the replacement teeth that went in that saw in that picture. So they didn't have diamond-embedded blades back in those days. They didn't have the technologies that we have now. So it was a stone tooth that they had a glaze on there that would outperform the cutting on the stone. And when it wore out, then he'd have to replace them. And they've been in a junk drawer for 50 years down at this guy's house. And he'd come across them every, couple, 3 years. They'd be in a junk drawer. He'd pull them out, and he'd look at them. And he'd remember back to the day when they were pulling apart the house. Well, they found this brand spanking new box of replacement teeth for the saw back then. And, half the family over here, they said, well, throw those away. They're junk. Those are worthless. Nobody wants those or needs them. Andrew's gone. He's dead. The whole plant's been shut down for years. The saw's long gone. They're worthless. Get rid of them. But Andrew was a real special guy. So this half the family over here says, you can't throw those away. Those belong to Granddad. And so they gave a couple of them to nieces and nephews, grandchildren, whoever would care enough to hold on to them as a keepsake, as a remembrance. And they sat in this junk drawer for 50 years. And he would come across looking for them, and looking for like nuts or bolts or something. He'd see them and go, yeah, I remember when they gave these to us. And we pulled apart the house and all those memories. Remember he talked about memories? That's what life is made up of. And he would have that memory and then throw it back in the drawer and shut it because you have to go on to find what you wanted. But now we get to put them on display, so people can see them for how the ingenuity of folks back in those days used to get things done. Now, here's one thing that was kind of funny. And the only reason it's funny because it happened to Jenny and not to me. The phone rings up at the house, and it's Mary Ann on the other end. And she sounds ticked because she picks up the phone and she says, what have you got my husband doing now? He's like, God, what's wrong? Because Dave does a lot for us and everything. And he says, he's in the driveway picking through buckets of nails. He says, He's doing what? He had buckets of nails left over from the job all those years ago. And he was picking out of those everything from framing nails right down to upholstery tacks. All square, handmade nails from Andrew Wilson's home down in Tenino. And those are the things that are in the museum tasting room that are really the precious things to us. Those are our history. Those are our heritage. And there's other stuff that's antiques and whatnot that are kind of cool to look at as well. But those are the things that really mean something to us. And that's what I want to share with you guys to see that front half of what Sandstone's all about. So that's where we came from. That's where the name came from and how we got to where we are. On to you.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the episode. It's but before we go, as we've been doing, we're going to give away another $5 Amazon gift certificate.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So, but basically, it's just you just pull up the post on Facebook on our Facebook page. Pull up the post on the Nerds Drink Whiskey Facebook page, and for this episode, and be the first one to comment. But the trick is, you always say, oh, what's the catch? Well, the catch is you have to include the code word for this episode. So, what's the code word for this episode?
Andrew's Hammer.
Okay, it's 2 words, but I'm going to include it. Andrew's Hammer. Yeah, Andrew's Hammer. Yeah, you can do the apostrophe S. 2 words is okay. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, 2 words is okay. Yeah, so include Andrew's Hammer in your reply, and all it has to do is be the first one to use the words Andrew's Hammer, and there you go. You win. So, anyways, what's that?
Nothing.
I trust you.
Good move.
See you back next week for another episode of Nerds Drink Whiskey.